All right, so we just got to the end of a 4-hour road trip, and yep, everybody's upset with each other. Let's get into it on this episode of Running with the Pack. So from Chase Elliott and Chastain to Christopher Bell and Kyle Busch, we had tons of contact with each other, with different drivers throughout the night. And as we said in the intro, lots of people are upset. Let's go ahead and go through the finishing order, and then we will get into my personal list of complaints about this race, in addition to some of the other things people are upset at. So I'm going to start off by going up over here, and we've got ourselves the results. We got the top 15 finishers. We have Christopher Bell, the race winner, managing to hold on after Kyle Busch tried every trick in the books to hang on to that lead, holding on. Christopher Bell taking a couple of diving swipes at Kyle Busch. Ultimately, Christopher Bell was able to move Kyle Busch out the way, and William Byron, and Reddick were able to blitz on through, and ultimately it became a 3-car race for the win. Again, Kyle Busch, after that, between just his tires wearing out and then the contact with Christopher Bell, his car just absolutely fell off a cliff, and he was already struggling to hold them behind him all night as is, so it was not a surprise that once he got knocked out the way, he was not able to keep up even remotely. So, again, good job to Christopher Bell going back-to-back here at a super speedway and now a road course to open up the year, starting off a very strong potential championship campaign. Saw the booth talking about how he was a championship favorite already, and it's like, yes, because we're 3 races in, and he's won 2 of the 3. Definitely looking forward, though, to seeing what he can do next week, as he's the defending winner of the Spring Phoenix race. Could absolutely establish himself as a championship favorite if he goes 1 for a 3, if he gets a 3-race win streak going, but also winning at the eventual championship track. I think that's a very strong way to come out as a contender. Then we got second place William Byron, who coincidentally was also involved in some controversy with Christopher Bell last year, and they're now the 2 drivers who have won and locked in spots to the playoffs. So good job on William Byron, just not quite enough today to come up over Christopher Bell, and that would have been ironic if William Byron ended up being the beneficiary of back-to-back seasons of Christopher Bell and Kyle Busch getting into each other. Because this happened last year as well when William Byron ended up sneaking on through to get the win. Then Tyler Reddick, the winner at Circuit of the Americas 2 years ago. Feels like we're talking about the same couple of guys a lot of the time. So, yeah, Tyler Reddick coming home in the 3rd place. Chase Elliott, 4 years ago, as Circuit of the Americas winner, came back from an insane amount of adversity. Ran in the mid-30s most of the race, courtesy of one Ross Chastain running into him and ultimately spinning him out, sending him back to the back of the field on lap 1. Again, we'll get to that in a bit, but Chase Elliott rallied late, coming from from the middle of the top 15 up into about 9th place with 2 laps to go, and then up to 4th place 2 laps later. Again, Kyle Busch, he led the majority of the laps. I think he led 43. I think he ended up leading like 43 laps, which was more than any other driver. Ultimately, just comes up short once again. But if he keeps running like this, eventually Kyle Busch is going to win another race. It's just a matter of when. And please, for the love, please just make it soon. I don't want to have to keep watching Kyle Busch narrowly lose races. Shane Van Gisbergen. If it wasn't for cautions in the stages, probably, it's him and Kyle Busch just decimating this race, because they dominated the first 2 stages. And then ultimately through stage 3, the result of pit strategy, he ended up shuffled a little bit further back, and then he had contact with his teammate, which ultimately left his car absolutely nowhere near as good as it was, not to mention the lack of clean air certainly did not help him. But SVG holds on for a top 10 finish, and now he can set his focus on the ovals, because I think our next road course isn't until June. So he's got plenty of time to go ahead and work on his oval craft before we get back to another road course. Speaking of road course, oval guys who have turned out to be pretty good road racers, Chris Buescher, he's been a really good road racer, won the Watkins Glen race a year ago, And now he comes up 7th at this race after Ford really was just nowhere in qualifying, and really Ford was nowhere in the race. I mean, I think this is about the most notable a Ford got all year, or all race long. Between him and the next guy we're going to mention, Noah Gragson. Where did Noah Gragson come from? Are you sure that this graphic is right? Are you sure that... Okay. Apparently Noah Gragson did actually get 8th place. I have absolutely no idea how he got there. He popped up at one point inside the top 5 late in the race. Ultimately faded a couple of spots back, but still, great days for both of those drivers who were driving for a manufacturer that was nowhere almost all day. I mean, legitimately, I don't think there was a notable thing from the Fords basically all day long. Alex Bowman coming home in the 9th position. Great day for another driver who's been very good at this Circuit of the Americas racetrack. And then rounding out your top 10 finishers, we have Todd Gilliland, who is really growing into one of the better road course racers, and obviously I think he learned from one of the best in the books, and best in the world when it comes to road course racing, who absolutely no bias here as a big Michael McDowell fan. He's learned it very well. Got a top 5 at the Indy Road Course a couple years ago for his first top 5. Now a top 10 at Circuit of the Americas. Again, he's growing into a very good road racer and a very good potential leader of that team. Now speaking about his mentor there, Michael McDowell, who has now moved on to the Spire Motorsports team. He has yet another top 15 finish and is now 8th in the point standings. I mean, I know it's very early. Obviously, we've had 2 super speedways and a road course, but he had an issue. He had a fuel pump issue at Daytona, a power steering issue at Atlanta that set him 6 laps down, and he had an electrical issue in qualifying at Circuit of the Americas. Imagine what he would be doing in points if 1 or 2 breaks would go his way. So, again, Michael McDowell, another top 15 day. Just waiting for that first top 10 of the year to pop off. Hopefully, as we go to his home state of Phoenix, or his home state of Arizona at the Phoenix Raceway, maybe he can turn it around, although short track's certainly not his specialty. Then we go to Ross Chastain. Again, as I mentioned, a little bit of contact with SVG. Obviously, the lap 1 over-aggressive move into the corner that ended up taking Chase Elliott and moving him to the back of the pack. But ultimately, Elliott was able to rally through the field, and Ross Chastain minded his P's and Q's for the most part outside of those couple of incidents, and he ends up coming home in the 12th position. Carson Hocevar, who had a fairly exciting night the other night in the Atlanta race, keeps himself nice and calm after also a wreck in the Xfinity Series race. He ends up having a nice, quiet day inside the top 10, top 15, almost all race long, and comes home 13th. AJ Allmendinger, another one of those road course specialists that we always talk about at these types of tracks. He had a good top 10 day going, and then all of a sudden just faded to the mid-pack for whatever reason. Not sure if he got damaged or something. He wasn't involved in any crash that I saw, but you could also get a lot of damage with just from incidental contact running side-by-side with drivers. And speaking of drivers who I have absolutely no idea how they got there, Brad Keselowski coming home in the 15th position. I watched this entire race. I do not remember one notable thing that Brad Keselowski did. So, good job, Brad Keselowski, on a top 15 day. So, those are your top finishers from Circuit of the Americas. Now, let's just go ahead and vent a little bit about NASCAR and the way they handle these road course races. Because, first and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and let's just start with the first incident of the race. Ross Chastain absolutely dive bombing it into turn 1. I mean, again, I've said at this point, I think that the track is mostly to blame for that because, again, the track is just inviting drivers to go ahead and bulldoze on in. Now, do I think it was a smart idea to do that on lap 1? Absolutely not. Am I surprised that Ross Chastain was the one to do it? Absolutely not. And then, Do I think that Chastain could have backed off entering the corner once he realized that there was absolutely no way he was going to do it? He was going to fit in there? Probably. But again, it's one of those things that just a tight Formula One style corner just is not designed for. Again, I loved this race. I feel like the race was great. I just look at some of these baked in flaws that just lead to very undesirable situations. Drivers being funneled into that corner. Then we get to the next incident from the race, which was about 4 or 5 laps in. Kyle Busch coming on the radio asking about a potential penalty on Shane Van Gisbergen, because Van Gisbergen was going way off course in turn turn 6, and he was informed over the radio, and pretty much every driver audio that I've heard so far sounded surprised that they were not officiating course-cutting penalties. They were just saying that in turn 6, you can do whatever you want. It's completely open for you to drive it however you want. In turns 3, 4, and 5, the 3 corners that lead up to that one, that are almost virtually identical to turn 6, they were officiating penalties in, but just not in turn 6. And why? Why not officiate the penalty the exact same way you do in the 3 corners before it? One of those things where, again, if you can't or won't officiate the penalty, it feels like you almost either shouldn't be there or at the very least, it should be well established beforehand. And again, the fact that Kyle Busch was not the only radio I heard this on. I think it was Chase Elliott and a couple of other drivers' audios that I've heard so far that have all been surprised that, we're just not they're just saying that turn 6 is just free game. Okay. And ultimately, I think I'd have to go back and rewatch the race and see if opening up turn 6 really helped the racing a ton. But it's one of those things where it's like, I just don't understand why you just decide randomly that turn 6 you're not going to go ahead and officiate the penalties. So that was one. And then we get to the end of stage 1 and the end of stage 2, which brings me to something that NASCAR fixed at one point, and then they went and doubled back on their decision because they felt like it kind of backfired on them. And that is the caution flags for the stages, especially at road courses. I have absolutely no problem with, and I will absolutely double and triple down on this, I have absolutely no problem with awarding points in the middle of the race. In fact, that's something I said way back before I even started making videos like this, back in 2015, 2016, that guys getting wrecked on the last lap of the Daytona 500, for example, or on the last lap of any race, looking at incidents like that. If you get wrecked at the last lap of Sonoma, I'd like to at least imagine that if you led the first 109 laps or whatever at Sonoma, that you still come away with some points from that, which, obviously, stage points give you the ability to earn at least half the points of what a race win alone earns you, which, again, I think is a very good thing. The thing that you don't need is, I don't think you need the guaranteed caution flag, especially at the road courses, where you're essentially opening yourself up to going and, where you're opening yourself up to everybody coming into pit and everybody willingly forfeiting these stage points because the couple of points aren't worth the loss of track position from the caution flag coming out and everybody else being able to pit beforehand and then staying out to take the yellow flag or take the track position back while the rest of the people who stayed out for the points pit. Again, maybe they can figure out something else, but again, it's just my opinion. I think that the cautions at the end of the road courses, it just feels like they add an unnecessary annoyance of the amount of strategy that gets taken out of the amount of strategy that gets taken out in that situation just feels like it makes it unnecessary for for the amount of benefit that it gives. I mean, we saw Bubba Wallace win a stage today. We saw Ryan Prix, Ryan Blaney, and Michael McDowell all stay out at the end of stage 2 to win the to get the stage points. None of those drivers were anywhere relevant. I mean, Bubba Wallace, yeah, he started on the outside of the front row, but he was relegated to mid pack by turns 5 or 6 or so. Yeah, and he was pretty close to irrelevant most of that first stage. And Ryan Prix, I legitimately don't think I said his name before or after the stage 2 finish, outside of when talking about the stage 2 winner. So, again, it's just one of those things where it feels like it could have. It feels like there should have been a better answer, and they tried it a couple years ago at the road courses. Then Michael McDowell went and dominated a Indianapolis race where there was no caution flag out there. Chase Elliott almost rallied back to win it, but ultimately Michael McDowell was able to dominate the Indy road course. And then I believe it was the very following week they announced that going forward at the starting at the Charlotte Roval race in the playoffs, that they were going to be going back to the old format of throwing the yellow for the cautions, and again just making that step backwards. So that was just a weird one, and again, it's just one of those things that doesn't feel like it's necessary, and I feel like that's the biggest thing coming out of the Circuit of the Americas weekend, is that it feels like there's so many things that feel unnecessary about this track that almost make you wonder, is it really worth it to be even bothering to go to this race, to be going to this track, if it is going to be a bunch of unnecessary non-race topics that we're talking about at the end of this. Again, it was a phenomenal race. And it feels like, and this is another thing that just is continuing on, it feels like all 3 races this year, the topic has been unnecessary stuff off the track, as opposed to talking about the great battles that we saw between Christopher Bell and William Byron, Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick, William Byron and Tyler Reddick, Tyler Reddick and Kyle Busch. Some absolutely phenomenal battles down the stretch of this race. And we're spending it talking about whether or not they needed to officiate stuff in turn 6. So, again, it's just one annoyance after another, and I will say I'm looking forward to getting back to some tracks that I think we pretty much know the rules at. I mean, obviously, there could still be some weird last lap yellow shenanigans at Phoenix or Vegas, but the odds of it are a whole lot less than the odds of us getting, say, a last lap crash at a super speedway like Atlanta or Daytona, or of us getting a unfair officiating, or a seemingly unfair or at least weird officiating thing like the turn 6 thing at CotA this week. So ultimately, again, I'm sure this will blow over and I will be fine with it in a bit, but at least in the early part of this, I'm just a little annoyed with that. So let me know what you guys thought of this race. Again, I think it was a phenomenal race. I just have a lot of worries about if we keep going back to this track, you keep risking it, what is going to eventually happen. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did enjoy the video, feel free to leave a like, comment down below what you guys thought of this race, and subscribe if you guys are new so you guys don't miss any future videos or live streams. We will be back on Friday for Fantasy Friday, and we will also be doing the ARCA race later that night. So we will be streaming ARCA, Xfinity, and Cup throughout the week. But quick thank you to all of our channel members and Patreon subscribers over on that on the bar there. Just a massive thank you. This list is growing day after day. Thank you to every person that is on this list. From the bottom of my heart. But until next time, hopefully you have enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Whatever you guys decide to do with the rest of your day. Have a great day, everybody, and goodbye!